Always learning and growing. Attracting the right people and keeping your vision in focus every day. This is the Brian Covey Show.
Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So it goes back to Housing Wire when we first met, and you were somebody I definitely wanted to bring on the show because that Housing Wire event changed the way I looked at a lot of things. And as you spoke, I was like, okay, this is somebody, one, I need to know because you're in Franklin. Right?
We're neighbors.
And I'm watching you, I'm like, okay, you're in Franklin, Tennessee. This is somebody I need to connect with. And you did such a great job there that I thought, okay, let's bring you on because I think the listeners and people out there that don't know you should hear your message and they should learn really more about what you're doing, but also about this whole superfan concept you've created and is, I think, taking off. And we want to get that out to more people.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's start with, I always love to know more about the person, right? So I know you guys moved here from Oklahoma originally?
I'm originally from Oklahoma. After college, I went to New York. So I was in Manhattan for 11 years. Wow. And then my husband and I moved here, I guess it's been almost 3.5 years ago that we moved to Franklin. Yeah.
To the growing Franklin city.
Yeah. Which, fun fact, I'd actually never been to Franklin before and went looking at houses sort of on a whim. Saw like 7, so I felt like, oh, okay, this is enough to like totally understand the market. Yeah. Fell in love with one in this town called Franklin and was like, I want this house. So,
moving here.
Yeah, put in an offer. My husband was actually on an airplane at the time, flying from LA back to New York because we were talking about moving to Tennessee. And so I'm emailing him like, babe, I think you're already on your flight, but like, can you open this listing? Like, look at this house. It looks really cool. And I didn't hear back from him. And I was like, I'll just put in an offer and see what happens.
Just roll with it.
Yeah, just roll with it. Flew back to New York, and they had accepted the offer by the time I landed. So I was like, baby, I bought us a house.
We're moving. Here we go.
And meanwhile, he's like asking all these, understandable questions about Franklin, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure it's lovely. Like, right. I've heard friends talk about it before.
Google it. You can't see all the people moving here, all the cool people coming here.
He's asking about the house. He's like asking about the school district and how far it is from like the hospital and like the fire station. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm sure it's all fine.
It's all gonna be good.
I'm sure the city planners thought of all of these things. It'll be great.
Worked it through, which is it's known. Like, we've been here 11 years, and so I know you've got Coda now.
Yep.
So 2.5, and what I know about Frank is like we moved because of the schools and the kids and all that stuff. And so for you guys, you moved here with Coda. Now you're expecting number 2, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, due in a couple of months.
Yeah. So I love talking before about the soccer piece. I was like, okay, if we can get him into soccer, let's get him there, get him playing.
Yeah, no, Cato is for sure, he's like a little bruiser. Like he loves hockey. That's probably the sport of choice for him right now. So, he will absolutely love soccer, golf, baseball. There's never not a sport that he's trying to play. So, right? Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit, we'll kind of shift over into the business side of how you decided you were going to get into creating your company originally and how that all began for you.
Yeah, so I recently exited a company that I was running for almost a decade, which was a lot of fun. It was called the Superfan Company. Yeah. And, it was really something that I'd wanted to do kind of my whole life. Yeah. So I was always obsessed with pop culture, but also pop culture fandom. Yeah. My first job was as a radio station mascot when I was 16 years old.
Oh, really?
Which was a lot of fun. Yeah, so the front lines of fandom. And then from there, I started writing for my radio station's blog and meeting all of these interesting people and artists and executives. And, I just became obsessed with the music industry. Yeah. So I decided that was what I was going to do for a living. Nice. And really every job I ever had was in the music industry. And I had this idea when I was in college to create a format for physical music that people would actually want to collect. Wow. Like basically merchifying music, because this was like 2003, 2004. So the entire music industry was, imploding really due to digital downloading. And everybody was like, people are never going to stop stealing music, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, if you want people to physically buy something, you've got to make it better than what they can steal for free.
That's right.
That's a lot more convenient, right? Yeah. Like, because you can get music instantly wherever you are. So, like, why would somebody want to get in their car, drive to the store, pay $20 for this thing that like comes in plastic. Right. So I'd written a business plan when I was in college for a company that would make merch versions of albums. And after I graduated, I went to work at a record company. I tried to implement it. Couldn't really get a lot of traction around the idea. So then I went to work in an ad agency where I was doing entertainment marketing with these giant brands who had, these enormous budgets. Again, there was a little interest, but it was hard to like get it off the ground. So finally, I was talking to a friend of mine who was a buyer at Walmart, and I said, you've been listening to me talk about this idea for 5 years now. I really believe in it. I really want to get it off the ground. I'm going to leave this job too, like I left the last one, to go, hopefully the third time will be the charm, and I can go find somebody who supports this. Because by that time, it's like 2010. So it's like there's clearly like a very limited amount of time left to do this. But the vinyl resurgence was just starting to happen. There was still a huge market for DVDs and video games. So I said, I really believe that this format, this idea of creating like a magazine or a book that's got these collectible merchandise items inside of it and branding it as this must-have package for super fans has a lot of legs. And my friend at Walmart was like, I totally believe in you. I think that you can make this work. And I know even if you go to some other company, it's going to be you driving it. Sure. Why don't you just start your own company? And I'll give you a vendor number. And if you can go get a couple of clients who agree to, take a risk and give it a go, I'll let you give your products a try nationwide. Wow. And I was like, okay, cool. So I quit my job, launched the company with a co-founder who actually worked for me at the agency that I was at the time. I was telling her that I was leaving to start this company, and she said, basically, can I come with you? And I was like, all right, cool. Let's do this. So literally Googled how to start a business. Like, knew nothing about being an entrepreneur, nothing about starting a company. I'd never even considered starting a company before, but figured, a lot of people figure it out. Right? I can probably figure it out too. So launched that company. Was very successful with it. Had several years of double-digit growth. I was very proud of the fact, like I said, I had no idea how hard it is to start a business and how the odds are stacked against you. So when we hit $1 million in revenue right before our first anniversary, or birthday as we always called them, I was like, this is really cool. Let me look it up. And only 2% of women-owned businesses ever reach the $1 million revenue marker, ever.
2%.
In a year, 2%. It's less than 2%. It's like 1.8% of women-owned businesses. And I was like, wow, this is kind of a big deal. So we started kind of telling that story. I was like, maybe we should be telling people how good we're doing. And then, it just multiplied from there. Every year we were doing several $1 million more business, and grew it up. And we're fortunate to work with some of the largest entertainers in the world and some of the biggest sports properties and entertainment properties and movie brands in the world, and just had a lot of fun.
It's a fun audience there.
It was a lot of fun, yeah.
So I'm curious, when you came up with the name for the company, that's always intriguing, super fans. How did you come up with that? And then we'll kind of transition, because I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, so it took a couple of tries to get it right. The original name of the company was actually Zine Pack.
Okay.
Because we were making a magazine package for these products. Yeah. And the buyers said, this needs a name. Like, we have to be able to call it something. We have to be able to tell people to go get the new Katy Perry what?
Sure.
Like, what is it?
What is it?
And we had tried, the Superfan was a name that I really liked from day one. Yeah. And like Superfan Edition was something that we were like, oh, it's the Superfan Edition of whatever. Yes. But we were encouraged to come up with like a configuration name. Yeah. And Pack was like they were like, oh, can you come up with something with Pack? Yeah. And so Zine Pack was the name of the company, but then like people called it Zine Pack, and nobody knew how to spell it, and it was so confusing. So and we wanted to change the name like a year after we started the company, but we had to wait for a minute because we got approached to be on Shark Tank. And so then we were like, oh my gosh, do we change our name right before we're going to go on national TV when we have like hundreds of thousands of units of products for dozens of artists in stores all over the world at that point? So we kept the name for, I think, 4 years or something. Yeah. And then we gradually transitioned it. Like, we had, like, the name was tiny, and then the tagline, the Superfan Company, was, like, much larger, and then it just became the Superfan Company over time.
So you led into it. So I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank and watching it. So big takeaway or the experience there? What was that like being on there? Because I watch it and, not being there, ever being on that stage, what was that like?
It was really fun. I mean, I was a big fan of the show, so I was excited. I literally just got a call at my desk one day from a casting producer that said, "Hey, do you want to be on Shark Tank?" Because he had read about us in like Inc. or Entrepreneur or somewhere, and I was like, yes, I would like to be on Shark Tank. So it was a lot of fun. As somebody who sort of over prepares for a lot of things, I watched every episode of the show, and then. So it was the summertime when they approached us, and we had summer interns, and so I built this crazy spreadsheet that was every single variable I could think of about the show, and had our interns like catalog every episode based on, were people getting more likely to get a deal if they were wearing a T-shirt with their company logo on it versus if they were dressed up. Oh yeah, the number of close-up shots, the number of faraway shots, because mine is just like secret for anybody who's like maybe gonna go on Shark Tank one day, something that worked well for us. I noticed that a lot of times the like up close reaction shots looked to be repeated. Or I was like, I think we already saw that person make that face. And I knew that there was probably a lot of, selective editing that was happening because I knew from some friends who had been on the show that they film for usually like an hour, sometimes longer, and then they cut it down to like 8 minutes. Yeah. So there's clearly a lot that's being left out. So my theory was that if we never stop smiling, they'll never have a bad shot of our face. So they'll have to do a positive edit. Like they won't be able to spin it into, unless it's just like a dumpster fire and we unless everything goes horribly wrong. So we practiced, my co-founder and I practiced for like a month before we filmed. And we couldn't tell anybody what we were doing because we weren't allowed to tell anybody we were doing a Shark Tank. So we were in meetings and we were just like smiling the whole time while we were talking. And then, in between, like when we were just listening to people, we were smiling. I'm sure we looked like absolute
faces
crazy
tired,
people. Because it is. It's hard. Like the muscles in your face start to hurt. If nobody's ever tried to smile for an hour nonstop, try it.
Painful.
You'll see your muscles start to hurt. So that was like our sort of game plan, was like if we never stop smiling, then hopefully we'll get a really favorable edit. And it's funny watching it back because we're smiling even while we're talking.
And I remember when I seen it, I'm like, okay, but you're right. They take that, and that's kind of the persona that you put out, and it's like, okay, that's easier to roll with. Yeah,
and it worked. We had a very favorable edit of the show. It was a lot of fun. We got very lucky. The episode that we were on was, if not the highest rated, one of the highest rated of the season, because it was a lead-in for this 2020 special that everybody was, there was like a ton of press around. It was the Bruce Jenner, Diane Sawyer interview where he was announcing he was transitioning. And so there was like 2 million more people than normal that watched it that week. So there was like a huge audience for the episode. That's awesome. It was a really favorable edit. So it was a cool experience. Cool. The thing that I wasn't counting on was it never even occurred to me, like all of the reruns. And not just here, where it's on CNBC and maybe like MSNBC or something else. Our episode re-airs every couple of weeks, like every 2 to 3 weeks, but it airs in over 100 countries around the world. So there's always somebody seeing it for the first time. And I get emails every single week still from people all over the world who are seeing it for the first time. And it's like this weird time capsule thing, because even though we filmed it, 5.5 years ago or whatever it's been, when people see it, it's new to them.
It's first watch for them.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a cool experience there.
So, it was a lot of fun.
So that kind of catapulted the company. And then as I was listening to you last year, too, one of the things I wrote down, I was going through my notes I had 2 pages of notes when you were speaking at the Housing Wire, which was unbelievable.
Well, thank you.
This whole piece about the W.A.V.E. approach. Yeah, so I'm like going through my notes again, reminding myself, I'm like, okay, I got to ask that question, because that was something I took away as one of those like almost aha moments of like, it seems so simple, but it made sense. So do you mind sharing that? Because I think the audience could benefit from that. Is like, what is that whole approach, and like, how did you come up with it, and just some background on it?
Yeah, of course. So, as the company was growing, we started to expand beyond just entertainment. Yeah. We started working with a lot of brands, and I discovered that I really, really loved the consulting piece and the challenge of figuring out how to take something or someone who's not a celebrity and create a fan base and a following from zero. Like, to me, that's more exciting.
The normal person.
Right.
Right.
Because to me, that's more exciting, and that's more of a challenge because, you know, you don't have like a song at pop radio, or you don't have this, you know, built-in fan base from touring for the past 10 years or whatever it is. So to me, that was the more exciting, more challenging, which actually sort of led to me exiting the company, selling my equity in the company, because I was ready to do more of this type of work. And, you know, I have a master's in marketing, and I'm a nerd, and I love that side of it. Like, I love the company building part of it. To me, that was always one of the most exciting parts of being an entrepreneur, was building my company. Like, I loved the work we were doing for others, but I loved, you know, the systems and the processes.
Actually building it.
Actually building it up. So W.A.V.E was an acronym that I came up with a couple of years ago that was really a way to help my consulting clients understand, as like a checklist of, let's make sure we're not missing any steps. So remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
From, you know, all the psych classes.
All those high school, college classes.
Exactly. Where, for anybody watching who's not familiar with it, it's, you know, the concept of you've got to satisfy the base needs before you can get to the higher needs.
That's right.
And people aren't worried about their higher needs until their base needs are met. And it's the same thing when you're talking about a brand, when you're talking about introducing new customers or fans into your fold. So W.A.V.E is an acronym that stands for welcomed, appreciated, validated, and engaged. And it's the idea of, you know, the very first step is making someone feel welcomed by your brand, or by you, if you're somebody who's doing sales or marketing, you're out there on the front line. And a lot of times this is going to either happen or not happen long before you ever talk to that person. So a lot of people in sales, if you ask them when does the relationship start, they think it's the first time they talk to the person on the phone, or when they're meeting them in person, or when they exchange the first email. But no, it's way before that. Like, because what you don't know is you could have lost countless leads before they ever got to that point, because somebody was turned off by something that they saw on one of your personal social accounts, or by the reputation that you have, or by something that they were told by somebody else when they were asking for a referral. So this idea of making people feel welcomed, saying, I want to work with you, I want to be here for you. I on my way here, I was driving from my house to the studio, and I drove by a church, and I don't even know the name of the church, and I thought, wow, they're doing such a great job. The church was like way, you know, like hundreds of yards back, set off from the road, and there was a giant sign by the driveway that just said hello in giant letters, and then underneath it, it said, we're so glad you're here. And I was like, that's, you know, like, that's doing such a great job to let people know, you know, welcome, welcome, you belong here. This is a place for you. And so making sure that you're not skipping that step, because a lot of people don't think about it. And a lot of times, you know, it's the things that are completely, you know, I don't want to say involuntary, but things we don't even think about that are turning people off. But I mean, everybody has been made to feel unwelcome at some point when they walked into like a store at the mall, or like a restaurant where they wanted to eat for the first time. And, you know, it sucks. Like, right?
It's not a good feeling.
Right. It's not a good feeling. And it's not something that you forget, because we remember the way that we're made to feel.
That's right.
So W.A.V.E is just a simple acronym. For anybody who wants to learn more or is interested, I actually have a free ebook that's up on my website. People can just grab. It's brittanyhodak.com/W.A.V.E, and you can download. It's like a 30-page ebook, and it goes through all 4 of the steps and how people can start implementing things to check the box on all of those to help make their fans feel like they're a part of the story.
It's huge. And we talk about BAM zone, so belonging, affirming, and meaning.
I love that.
And so it ties into that well. And I was going back through those notes, and that's why I was like, whether it's mortgage industry, where we serve a lot of customers there, and real estate, which is a lot of my friends, figuring out how we do that. And I love what you said. It starts before that first interaction. I think so many people now, we talk about, they Google your name, they look for experiences, they hear experiences. And we don't even think about the power of that today. And before they've talked to you, they may come in with an idea of what the experience will be like, and you have that moment in time to actually change it. So let's just say real world here, right? Like, someone comes in, first experience with them. Maybe they don't have the best experience coming before. You know, they've heard things, they've done reviews, but somehow they still land, and you have an opportunity to kind of win them over. Are there any tips or strategies you've given anybody to say, you know, in that first interaction, how would you try to win them over and really build them into becoming like a super fan, like, you know, someone you want to work with?
Great question. So I always say the secret to creating super fans is connecting your story to their story.
Oh, yeah.
Connecting your story to your customer story.
Yeah.
That overlap is the superfan zone.
Yes.
Like, that's where super fandom happens. And what a lot of people get wrong is they don't listen. They just simply don't listen to the customers, either because they are so focused on showing what they know, or because they feel like, you know, I know that the best thing to do is for me to say these things, or to go through the script, or read through whatever. Like, we all sort of get stuck in these cycles.
Yeah.
But it's so important to listen to your customer's story. You've got to develop a set of critical questions that are going to help you understand what the person's needs are, because if you don't connect your story to their story, they're absolutely going to forget.
Yeah.
You just become another person.
That's right.
It's all about the points of intersection and the interaction. So I love acronyms, as you know.
Me too.
Another acronym that I use a lot when I teach about super fandom is the word super. And the word super stands for start with your story. Okay. Which means getting super clear on what it is that makes you unique and different. Like, what are you the best in the world at? Yeah. And I am always so shocked when I ask people, you know, we know a lot of the same mortgage people. Yep. When I talk to originators or lenders, or really anyone who's in the industry, and say, tell me why you're the very best person in your market for someone to work with. Right. And they can't answer it. Or they default to something about their company. And I say, no, not your company, you. Because a customer doesn't work with a company. A customer works with a human. They work with another human. And I want to know, as a human, why are you the very best person in your market to help people? Yes. And people can't answer that question. And I'm like, well, if you can't answer that question, how in the world could you expect your customers to answer that question? That's right. And more importantly, how could you expect a potential customer who doesn't even know you yet to answer that question? Yeah. And, you know, the answer is, if it's not obvious why you're the best, then the logical conclusion that somebody's going to come to is like, well, you must not be. That's right. Like, you must not be the best, or I would know why you were the best, or you would be able to tell me why you're the best. So step number one, and the S in the acronym of SUPER, is start with your story. You've got to absolutely understand what it is that gives you your superpowers. Yes. And then U is understanding your customer stories. So again, it's different for every professional and every industry, but learning how to do a better job of listening to uncover the important details, because no two customers are ever going to be the same. That's right. As much as you think they are. I don't care what you're selling. Even if you're, you know, a product business, not a service business, there are never going to be two transactions that are exactly the same. Yeah, there's always some uniqueness to it. We got to pick up on that. Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because I think the story, and we've really tried to lean in on that with our group, is your brand powered by the company, right? Because people do want to connect with that story, and a lot of people have gotten. I noticed, especially in our industry, in the mortgage space, it's like they get nervous about sharing their story, and they're like, hold on, I don't want to do video. I don't want to share, like, and be vulnerable and actually share those things. And I think, to your point, it's hard to really connect, because most customers are wanting a real person. Right. They want your expertise, but they really want to know, I'm doing business with someone that I align with. Absolutely. And how would you suggest someone go about not necessarily uncovering their story? Because I think, you know, the Simon Sinek's of the world and all this, like, find your why and all these things. There's probably a lot of information out there, but as people start to share their story and they get clear, are there any tips you would give them on, like, how can they convey that story in a way that would connect and help them intersect stories? Yeah, so one thing that I think where a lot of people get tripped up, and especially around the idea of video, is people get really, really hung up on the how. Yes. You know, the plot, like, I don't know how to use TikTok. I don't know how to use Instagram. I don't know how to do email marketing. And I always say, if your first question that you're asking is how, you're going to fail. Because you're just chasing trends. You're just trying to do what somebody else has, like, told you that you should be doing. Right. And you mentioned Simon and the idea of starting with a why. The why is your story. Yeah. But as important, if not more important, is the who, which is your customer story. Yeah. And if you're not super clear on who you're trying to reach, who your exact customer avatar is, and not necessarily from a demographic standpoint, it could be a psychographic standpoint. It could be a need-based avatar. Yeah. If you don't know that, then you're never going to get it right with the how. because the why and the who are infinitely more important than the how, because the how is always going to change.
Yeah.
Like right now, the how is video marketing, right?
Right.
In the mortgage industry and some of the other industries that we were talking about.
Yeah.
But that's going to change. It's always going to change.
Right.
And if you're not super clear on who you are trying to serve and why you're the best person to serve them, it's all going to just, I mean, I hate to use the word desperate, but honestly, like that's the word that comes to mind a lot of times when I see, especially some of these like TikTok videos of people that I'm like, you're 50 years old. What are you doing?
Yeah. Why are you doing that video?
Like, how is this serving your customer?
Right.
How is this making someone think you are the right person to help them with what they need and not just some like desperate attempt to try to go viral?
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And it's like when I see those types of attempts that aren't based in any kind of, you know, underlying strategy, it just looks like someone who needs affirmation from strangers.
Yes.
Like that tells me that
you're attention.
Right. That tells me that who you are is somebody who thrives on attention and affirmation from strangers, which isn't necessarily the trait that's going to be at the top of the list of somebody that if you're looking for an expert to help you through, you know, a new life situation or process or service that you don't understand. So
wow. I love the way you connected those, because I do see that, and whether it's mortgage or other industries, you start to watch trends, and people are late sometimes. You know, you got the early innovators. I always look at kind of the shift there, and maybe I think it's 2.5% are innovators. They're early. Then you got kind of the late people that come later in the process, and it's like, to your point, well, what if that changes? And I've heard Gary V share that several times, like today, you know, going all in on LinkedIn and like spending time and energy there. Because, but what happens in a couple years when it changes? What's your brand? To your point, do you know your story? Do you know your avatar of your customer? And I've just seen that's been a struggle in our industry, honestly, of people trying to figure it out, and they're all going after the same kind of shiny object to do that. Versus get the fundamentals.
Well, get the fundamentals, and also I think people forget that the absolute cheapest way to acquire a customer, no matter what business you're in, absolutely the cheapest and most effective way to acquire a customer is through a referral. And people forget that. And they don't do anything at all to super serve their customer base. Or if they do, it's based on what they need rather than what the customer needs.
That's right.
So it's like, to use the mortgage example, like if the first time somebody who you helped get a mortgage is hearing from you again is because you pick up the phone and say like, hey, want to refinance? Like, what kind of experience is that? What kind of customer experience is that? And is that somebody who is going to be primed to create more customers for you? And there's a quote that I read several years ago that really kind of changed the way that I thought about marketing. And it was, the quote is, the purpose of a business is to create a customer who creates customers.
Yes.
And if you can do that, if every customer you create is creating more customers for you, then that really is super fandom in a nutshell, right? You've got people that are going to be highly referred, highly qualified, inbound referrals. And think about how much more fun and how much easier your job becomes in any industry that you're at, if it's sales-based at all.
That's right.
If you've got a constant influx of people who are calling you saying, hi, I think I want to work with you. Like, so-and-so has told me you're great. Tell me a little bit more about yourself.
You're starting to attract the right customers from that. And I love that, because that's where I think people, they do overlook, like the referrals that come in warm like that, even though we know people are going online and shopping for houses and all that stuff there, but that referral is still the cornerstone of our business. Those are the referrals we want. And I love how you said creating customers that create more customers. And I'm finding today, like, we miss those opportunities. And you think about, especially mortgage, it's funny when you said that, I thought too, we had a conversation yesterday, and I think the stat we were told, whether it's true or not, it's one of those that it feels right, but it's around 95% of mortgage professionals, after, let's say they do a purchase loan for a customer, don't reach out for over a year. And they default to CRM, email campaigns and things, but actually picking up the phone and making a contact. So there's maybe 5% that have been identified that are consistent of they have a strategy and a follow-up to pick up the phone. And to your point, not call and go, hey, rates have dropped, right? And not being basic of, I'm calling, it's been a year since, you know, it's like, well, what about their kids' birthdays and, you know, anniversaries that you got that information while they gave you all their info? And I'd be curious, what are some things you see? Because I do think that's an area that people could separate and build a brand around, is if you're known for that person that engages with your customers, not just, through the process and closing, but how would you recommend people engage to create that connection?
That's a really great question. My answer is it depends.
Yeah.
Because you've got to do it in a way that's authentic to you. It's got to be authentic both to your story and your customer story.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say, a rule that you probably heard me talk about in Keynote, it's called the Platinum Rule.
Yeah.
We all grew up with the Golden Rule, which is treat others the way you want to be treated. But the Platinum Rule says treat others the way they want to be treated.
Love that.
And it's so much more powerful because it's coming from a place of understanding that not everyone wants the same things that you want.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the same life experiences and backgrounds and preferences. So even you mentioned picking up the phone and calling. That's great unless you've got a customer who doesn't like to talk on the phone. Right? And in that case, it's not picking up the phone. It's, sending them a message or a handwritten note or,
Yes.
whatever is their communication choice or their communication preference of choice. So to answer your question, nobody ever automated their way to having super fans, right?
Right.
Nobody ever became a super fan because they were put in the right funnel or
Right.
added to the right email marketing campaign or got a postcard from you in the mail. That is not how it works.
Yeah.
However, using the automation tools that are available frees up so much time and brain power for, in this case, mortgage professionals, but really anyone to over deliver on those things. So you mentioned the CRM before. It is so easy now. We've got so many powerful tools at our fingertips. We just have to take the time to automate them, right? So think about what it is that makes it, that gives you a unique opportunity to reach out based on the intersection of your brand and your customer's brand.
Yeah.
So you mentioned maybe it's the kids' birthdays, maybe it's the anniversaries. Anytime someone says something to you that you think is going to give you an opportunity to reach out again, maybe it's their favorite sports team, maybe it's the first concert they saw when they were a kid, whatever it is, add that as a field to your CRM. And make it your goal to get the answer to that question at some point during the first few conversations, right? And if it's, one that I use a lot is, the first concert that you went to.
Yeah.
Because we all have fun memories around the first concert that we went to, right? And try to find something cool that brings it back to that experience of that band for them. Whether it's you're getting them tickets to a show, whether you're framing a cool vintage album cover that you found on Etsy, whatever it is. There's a million things that you can do. And again, that the how you do it is not as important as the fact that you did it. They're not, what they're going to remember is the sentiment and the thought behind it, not necessarily the thing.
Right.
So it's less about what the thing is and more about the thought behind the thing, which we know to be true as humans, right? It's the same in our everyday life. It's, if you think about the most meaningful gifts you've ever received in your lifetime, they're meaningful because of the thought behind them.
That's right.
Not what they were.
Yes.
So while you can certainly say here's a universe of 20 gifts that I love to give, or 20 ways that I like to acknowledge people. It's clearly less about what the thing is and more about the thought behind the thing, especially when you're dealing with regulations where you've only got a few dollars that you're allowed to spend on somebody anyway, right? It's not about the fact that the gift costs $12. It's about the thought behind that $12 gift.
Yeah, that was unique to them. And I love what you said, because those are a lot of examples that hopefully people picked up on. Is I love you went through sports teams and you went through concerts and music and all these things they may love, and their favorite foods, and all this stuff. We should get that information. Yeah,
and it's so easy to do, right? It's so easy to bring it up in the course of conversation. And I always say, try to have your set list, like the way a cover band, if they're going to play at a bar, they don't just show up with one set list, right? They've got a bunch of songs in their repertoire that they know that they can kind of shift and move and change, and every show might be different based on the audience that's at the bar, the environment of the bar. So having in your repertoire, okay, here are 20 things or 25 things, and my goal is to get the 6 or 8 that make the most sense for this customer, and then to follow up on a very regular basis on just one of them. For me, something that I love to do is send people half birthday cards, because if nobody knows, everybody gets birthday cards in the mail, right? But if you know somebody's birthday, you know their half birthday,
Yeah.
And like people don't get a lot of half birthday cards.
Yeah, that's new.
So when a really funny half birthday card shows up to somebody in the mail, gets their attention, right? Or like sometimes I'll send people cupcakes on their half birthday just for fun, and say, go ahead and eat the whole cupcake, even though it's only your half birthday. Just like something funny like that. Because again, you're setting yourself apart. Like the holidays are the worst time to send greetings and gifts to your customer, because you're one of like 87 Christmas cards or New Year's cards or right. Versus if you send somebody a Valentine's Day greeting. Or, you know, a 4th of July greeting or something else. There's a much higher likelihood that there's less noise that you're competing with.
I love that, because I think that's where we're all trying to cut through, because people are getting a lot of information, whether it's social or to your point of maybe they're on a CRM here and they're in these funnels and they're all over the place. And you're like, how do I cut through and add value as they go through? So I'm curious, before we shift into your speaking, what you're doing a lot of now, first concert, you mentioned. Who was your first concert?
First concert. So the first concert that I ever went to as, you know, not like a kid at the fair, was Matchbox 20.
Ooh, good one.
I was 13, and I was so excited to go see them. Yeah.
Yes. So still keep up with them?
Oh, yeah. I've seen them so many times.
Yeah, because they were here, I think, recently. So I try to keep up now, but that's a good one. Good.
How about you? What was your first concert?
So as a kid, this will be an embarrassing moment, but I ended up going to like the boy band stuff when they came out. But we did everything, New Kids on the Block when they came out. First real concert, Fish came through. So Memphis had Mud Island, and they would come through. And back then, Dave Matthews, and I remember the Allman Brothers and all that. And I was into that because I was a bass player.
You must jammy.
I was jammy band, and I would love those bands that, you know, would just play and they would just jam. Like, to your point, they would go off the script and they would just play. And I was so amused and like fascinated as a bass player and a musician. I thought, how do these guys how do they know what they're playing? Where are they going with this? But they just played to the crowd and just enjoyed it. And you could tell like a real passion for it.
That's really cool.
So that was it. My favorite artist, though, I'll say my favorite concert, Justin Timberlake. I got to say, Memphis guy. Yeah.
I was going to say Memphis boy.
Yeah. And that's one you go to and you're just, if you're a musician, you love.
Right.
So how about you? Favorite concert?
So,
Matchbox 20?
Gosh. One of my favorite concerts of all time, I'm a huge fan of the Killers.
Yeah.
And Sam's Town was my favorite record. And when the Sam's Town record came out, the Killers did like this tiny show at the theater at Madison Square Garden, which is a venue that holds, I don't know, maybe like 1,500 people or something, which at the time was like a huge underplay for them. And I got into the show, and it was great. And they played the whole record start to finish. Yeah. And then they played, you know, all their hits and everything. And it was so much fun. And for the 10th anniversary of that record, they went to the casino in Las Vegas that the album is named for. There's this like old like local casino called Sam's Town, and it's a gambling hall, right? It's called like the Sam's Town Saloon and Gambling Hall or something like that. And there's a venue that holds like a few hundred people, and it's for like the local bands to come and play. And the Killers did a show where again they played the entire Sam's Town record start to finish, and then they did like the rest of their songs. That was so fun. So that for sure is probably my favorite concert experience, just because I love the band and because it was like such a cool venue. Like and to see it, you know, to see an album that I loved so much start to finish again 10 years after seeing it when it first came out was a really, really cool experience.
That's cool.
So that was probably my favorite concert.
I love those.
So, and I've seen the Killers a ton. It was so fun when they played Pilgrimage this year in Franklin. I was like, my favorite band is playing a few miles from my house. This is so cool.
Yeah, they bring in some good ones.
Yeah, we took Cato the next day to Pilgrimage to see Foo Fighters, and he loved that. So
he'll be to grow up with great music here.
Oh yeah, he loves music.
So tell me about, now you've shifted, and I love following you because I feel like I can watch all these speaking engagements you're on. I get to watch you at Housing Wire, and then now you're popping up all over. So you're kind of living out this next chapter. And so how did you get into that? And tell us a little bit like what you're up to now.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I felt like I was kind of like a professional dabbler for a while because I was running my company. And like I said, I really loved building the company more than I loved the day-to-day of like running the company. And I loved all of the client work, and I loved all the fun projects, and, you know, feeling like I was getting to work on 8 or 10 or 12 different things at a time. And what that kind of led to, you know, it was easy when I was, you know, didn't have a kid and was just like living in Manhattan. But over time, I was like, okay, I'm, you know, running this company. I was writing for a bunch of places on the side, just contributing to like Forbes and Adweek and Success and all these places.
Oh, wow.
Again, because it was fun.
Sure.
Like I was hosting a podcast because, again, a client had asked me to do it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I was doing all this consulting. I was starting to do speaking because people were coming to me more and more asking me to speak.
Yeah.
And I finally sat down and was like, this is not sustainable. I felt like a snowflake. Like I was growing and going in, a million different directions instead of one focused direction. Yeah. So I said, in order for me to spend the most time with my family and be the best, like I don't want to just be really good at a bunch of things. I want to pick one thing and work as hard as I can to be as good as I can be at one thing. And so I looked at all the things that I was doing, and while I was really enjoying all of them, it was like I would sit down and work for 10 hours, and I was not working for more than like 2 hours on any one thing because there were just so many deadlines and things that I owned. So I made the really hard decision to say, I'm going to give a lot of this stuff up. And, I let a bunch of my consulting contracts expire with clients that I loved. I exited my company. I sold the equity in my company to walk away from it. I stopped doing a lot of the writing projects that I loved. I stopped hosting the podcast that was so fun for the client. That was a client that I loved and respected so much because I said, I really want to focus on this one thing. And why I chose speaking and what I love about it is because it gives me the opportunity to constantly be learning. I'm constantly getting to research and try out new ideas and think of new things. But what I really love is it gives me the opportunity to meet and interact with so many different people and to help them on their journeys. And it's so cool for me when, I'll go speak to, it doesn't matter if it's 200 people or 2,000 people, to get emails or social messages a couple of months later from somebody who's like, hey, what you said really impacted me, and here's what I implemented as a result of hearing you speak, and here's what it's meant for me. And, it's just so powerful to hear those stories from people who have said, you've completely changed the way that I think about customer engagement, or you've completely changed the way that I think about the sales process, or, we completely redesigned the way that we do sales and customer engagement at my company. I thought I had a customer service department until I saw you speak, and then you made me realize that everyone is the customer service department. Like everyone's job is customer service. So we changed the names and titles of people. Like to get these messages is just so fun and so like reaffirming that this is important. It's as the world becomes more automated and digital, there's a very real threat that it could become less human. And I think especially in industries that are sort of on the front lines of becoming automated more and more, the only way that you can win, the only way that you can differentiate yourself is to double down on the human part. That's it. And to say, I'm going to go all in on the human-to-human connection, the person-to-person connection. And again, the word that I use for that is creating superfans, because that's the world I come from. But, it's all about the human-to-human interaction. It's all about creating a customer that creates more customers for you. And so for me, that's something that's so exciting, to be able to go out and speak and teach workshops and, work one-on-one with, I've had so many people coming to me lately saying like, can you do a certification program? And, I want to take classes from you on an ongoing basis. So we'll see what the next couple of years look like. I am almost finished with a book that I'm really excited about. It'll be coming out. And, it takes a while to get them out with major publishers, so probably not until next year. But, the idea of being able to, like, further spread this idea, because it really is, really my message is just, like, let's be kind to each other. Let's be nicer to people. Let's treat people the way they want to be treated. And I really feel like that if I can create more advocates, if I can get more people to buy into this message, the world's going to become a better place, right? Because we've got more people out there who are making a conscious effort to be better humans.
Yeah, and they're aware. It's almost like when you know better, you can do better.
Exactly.
And I can sense that passion as you're getting out and speaking and sharing that, because you can change cultures with language and the things you're sharing. I know even with our group, we left, and I remember you sharing the platinum rule, and I'm glad you shared it, because that changed my mindset a bit. It was like, hold on, golden rule, platinum rule, what are we talking about? And as that starts to grow and permeate through, then as a company changes, then industries can change, and to your point, then people start interacting in a way that it's actually uplifting right? Instead of tearing people down. And I think that message needs to be heard today.
Yeah, and it's because it really does, it starts with one person. I'm going to like mess the quote up, but, the thoughts become words, words become action, action becomes reality. Like that, it really, that idea of, sometimes we forget that one person really can change the world. Like one person really can make a difference. And one thing that I always try to keep in mind, and it's hard, and especially like right now, like, I'm pregnant, I've got a toddler, and I'm tired all the time, and he's in preschool, so like he's sick all the time, which means I'm sick all the time. Yeah. But I try to be so conscious of the fact that every person that I talk to throughout the day, every meeting that I have, or every interaction that I have, it could be an email, it could be a phone call, it could be whatever, any interaction that I have with another person is going to, for them, either be a net neutral, which means they walk away feeling exactly the same, a net negative, which means they walk away feeling a little bit worse than they did when it started, or a net positive, where they feel better about themselves in their day based on the interaction that we had together, based on something that I was able to affect about the energy of that dynamic in their day. So I try really hard to make sure that every interaction I have with somebody is a net positive for them. Because then what it does is, it creates those little ripples, and you never know, especially, for people out there who are working in sales, but in any industry, anything that you're talking with people, you never know if the person that you're talking to is like one little step away from a breakdown, like one little bad thing away from just losing it, because you never know what's going on in other people's lives. So, trying to be nice, trying to be kind, I feel like is important for anyone, regardless of what, I talk about finding your own story, but I feel like part of everyone's story should be being a nice person. Like we should all just be nice people.
Yes, I love that. So you shared a ton today, and hopefully everybody, it's a lot to unpack.
I feel like I rambled.
I love it. No, and as I was thinking back, and I'm looking at my notes, and I'm like, okay, I hope you share these things, because I do think that regardless of what industry or what people do, sales or support roles or, mom, dad, like whatever it is, like they can take those, and that can be personal and family application at your church, if you're a coach out there. I know some of my friends are coaches and all. That is something we can all lean in on and actually implement. And your point, one person crazy enough to think they can change that little world they're in, and then that just grows.
Yeah, the ripple effects of a customer creating more customers, or a person creating positive change.
So don't forget, where can people find more information about like where you are on Instagram and websites and stuff? Because I'm sure people are going to want to know more info.
So my website is BrittanyHodak.com, and I am at Brittany Hodak on every social network.
Yes, you need to follow her, 100%. And I love the ebook earlier, because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you can check out the ebook. And then I don't currently have an ebook out on the other acronym, which I don't think I went through the entire acronym, but SUPER is one that I absolutely want people to know more about. So you can follow me. I do content on it pretty regularly, but it's start with your story.
Yep.
Understand your customer story. The P stands for personalize and connect.
Okay.
The E stands for exceed expectations, which is so important. Don't just meet the expectations, exceed them.
Yes.
And then the R in SUPER stands for repeat, because you've got to do this on a very regular basis.
Keep it
and
going.
again, that comes into the automation and the CRM and making these habitual things that you do over and over again.
I love it.
SUPER.
Yes. So hopefully all of you can create your own super fans, and you can follow along. This has been so good. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Love getting to hang out with you, and it's one of those like benefits of you get to learn while you get to hang out with cool people. So thank you for joining us, and looking forward to following your journey as you speak more. I love watching you out there. So you're doing a great job.
Thank you. So thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Subscribe, rate, and review The Brian Covey Show today. Go to briancovey.com.